Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into a real head-scratcher, a case that unfolded right in the heart of New York City's Upper West Side and continues to puzzle true crime enthusiasts to this day. This is the story of the missing manuscript and the vanishing act of renowned author, Alistair Finch. Alistair Finch wasn't just any writer. He was a literary titan, the author of over a dozen critically acclaimed novels, each one a complex tapestry of suspense and intrigue. At 72 years old, Finch was a recluse, living in a grand, old brownstone filled floor to ceiling with books, the ghosts of stories past, and the scent of aged paper. For years, rumors had swirled about his magnum opus, a final, sprawling novel said to be his most ambitious and shocking work yet. Publishers were practically throwing money at his doorstep, eager to get their hands on this legendary manuscript. But Finch, a meticulous and private man, kept it locked away, sharing its contents with no one. Then, on the morning of October 17, 2023, Alistair Finch vanished. His housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, a woman who had worked for Finch for over 20 years and knew his routines better than anyone, arrived at the brownstone to find the front door unlocked and the house eerily silent. Finch was nowhere to be found. His morning tea sat untouched on his desk, and his signature tweed jacket lay draped over a chair as if he had just taken it off. Panic set in quickly. Mrs. Gable immediately contacted Finch's literary agent, Julian Vance, a slick, fast-talking man who saw Finch's final manuscript as his golden ticket. Vance arrived at the brownstone within the hour, his initial concern quickly morphing into something else as he surveyed the scene. The police were called, and what they found only deepened the mystery. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle. It was as if Alistair Finch had simply walked out the door. But where would a man of his age and habits go without telling anyone? And why would he leave behind his most prized possession, the manuscript? The investigation focused initially on those closest to Finch. Mrs. Gable was thoroughly questioned, but her distress seemed genuine, and her alibi was solid. Julian Vance, the agent, became a person of interest due to the immense financial stake he had in the missing manuscript. His office was searched, his communications were reviewed, but nothing concrete linked him to Finch's disappearance. Then there was Eleanor Riggs, Finch's longtime editor. Known for her sharp intellect and even sharper tongue, Riggs had a complex relationship with the demanding author. They often clashed over his work, but there was also a deep respect between them. Riggs claimed to have last spoken to Finch a week prior to his disappearance, discussing minor edits to a different, older work. She expressed shock and concern over his vanishing act. As days turned into weeks, the police followed numerous leads, each one turning into a dead end. Had Finch suffered a medical emergency and wandered off? It seemed unlikely given his physical health, though he was undeniably eccentric. Had he decided to finally escape the pressures of his fame and start a new life? Also improbable for a man so deeply tied to his work and his routines. The literary world buzzed with speculation. Theories ranged from a publicity stunt gone wrong to Finch having finally succumbed to a long-hidden illness. But one question lingered above all. What happened to the manuscript? A thorough search of Finch's brownstone yielded no trace of the final novel. His safe, where he usually kept important documents, was empty. Had he taken it with him? If so, why leave everything else behind? Months passed, and the case grew cold. Alistair Finch became another name in the city's long list of missing persons. The legend of his lost manuscript, however, only grew stronger. Then, almost a year after Finch's disappearance, a break in the case, or so it seemed, emerged from an unlikely source. A small, independent bookstore in Greenwich Village received an anonymous package. Inside was a manuscript, bound in simple brown paper. Accompanying it was a short, typed note. For those who appreciate the true art of storytelling. There was no signature. The bookstore owner, a literary enthusiast named Arthur Jenkins, recognized the distinct style and voice immediately. It was undeniably the work of Alistair Finch. Word spread like wildfire through the literary community. The missing manuscript had resurfaced. Julian Vance, Finch's agent, was ecstatic. Eleanor Riggs was bewildered. The police reopened the investigation with renewed vigor. But where had the manuscript been all this time, and more importantly, where was Alistair Finch? The manuscript itself was a sprawling, complex masterpiece, even darker and more intricate than Finch's previous works. It hinted at long-buried family secrets, betrayals, and a protagonist who seemed eerily similar to the author himself. The police meticulously analyzed the package and the note. The paper was common, the typing unremarkable. There were no fingerprints other than those of the bookstore staff. The sender remained a ghost. Theories began to resurface with new intensity. Had Finch orchestrated his own disappearance, sending the manuscript out anonymously to create even more buzz around his final work? It seemed a plausible, albeit theatrical, move for a man of his eccentric reputation. But if that were the case, why hadn't he resurfaced himself? Another theory suggested that someone close to Finch had hidden the manuscript, perhaps intending to release it at a more opportune time. Both Vance and Riggs were looked at again, their denials echoing in the face of the recovered novel. One intriguing detail that emerged from the manuscript itself was a recurring motif of a hidden room within an old brownstone. This led the police to conduct a second, more thorough search of Finch's residence. Behind a false wall in his study, they discovered a small, dusty room. Inside, there was nothing of significance, except for a single, tarnished brass key lying on the floor. The key didn't fit any of the locks in the house. Its purpose remained a mystery. To this day, the disappearance of Alistair Finch and the reappearance of his manuscript remain unsolved. Was it a carefully planned exit by a celebrated author seeking ultimate privacy? Was it the work of someone who stood to gain from his disappearance and the eventual release of his final novel? Or was there a darker, more sinister element at play? The ending of Alistair Finch's life, much like the endings of his novels, remains shrouded in suspense. His manuscript, however, continues to captivate readers, a haunting reminder of the talented author who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the lingering question: what truly happened to Alistair Finch, and what secret was he trying to tell us in his final, Missing Manuscript?